Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What was your scariest something's not right here moment? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Merry Christmas, everyone.
I was walking to school in middle school, and this lady with a car pulled over next to me and called me Linda. That's not my name, but was close enough. I looked up. She apologized and explained she thought I was her grandkid. Then she offered me a ride to school, except that I was already standing on the school grounds. I had half a block walk before I needed to turn to walk into the building. When I said no, she tried to demand I get into the car. I said no thanks and took off running. It occurred to me much later that she probably had no intention of dropping me off at school. One day, I was in a parking garage across the street from a courthouse after filing a document. I'm a paralegal. As I'm me, I get off the elevator where I think my car is parked and it's nowhere to be found. This is not unusual, so I start wandering around, pushing the button for it to beep. After about a minute of wandering, I noticed a guy walking around too. He doesn't appear to be following me, but he's giving me the creeps anyway, so I keep an eye on him. There's no one else on that level except for him and me. Finally, I determined that my car must not be on that level and get into the elevator to go down a level. I get off the elevator and keep an eye on it for a second. The guy doesn't appear, so I brush it off as my paranoia. I start walking around pushing the button again. Then, as I turn the corner, there's the guy again. So this time I know he's following me. I head for the elevators. Then I notice that he's heading that way too, and is on par to cut me off, and I start to panic. Again, we're alone on the level. Just then, the elevator doors open, and two guys in suits get off. I run up to them and say, "There you guys are. I've been looking for you all over this level and the one above. Where the hell did you guys park?" And I'd laugh. The guys kind of look at me weird, but to their credit, they don't even blink, and one of them responded with, "Oh, sorry, we're on this level, but we brought Tom's car instead of mine, and I forgot to tell you, we're parked over here." And they led me away. I see the guy that had been following me stop, stare, then start down the stairs beside the elevator. Once he stops, I tell the guys what had happened, and they help me find my car. It was on the first level. I just never got close enough to hear it beep, and I was safe. To this day, I know that guy was waiting for me to find my car so he could do something nefarious. I avoid parking garages at all costs now. If I'm forced to park in one, I take a picture of where I park so I don't get lost anymore. I also carry pepper spray on my keychain. I was working on a radio system in the local water tower of a pretty remote outback town. It was a beautiful late spring day in October when I got there, but after about 2 hours, the bird noises stopped. The breeze stopped. I took my equipment out of standby and flagged it as live test because I had the weirdest feeling I didn't have time to fully test it, and went outside to sit in the car. About 90 seconds later, there was a direct lightning strike on the tower I'd just left. It was the highest point in 200 kilometers. It was literally the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Ever. Late at night, I was sitting in my car waiting for my boyfriend to finish his shift. A guy walks past and we make eye contact. I feel this sense of danger, but figure I'm overreacting. A few minutes pass and the fear won't go away. I finally decide to move my car away from the edge of the parking lot to the front of the restaurant in the customer parking area. I start up my car, and just as I'm putting it into drive, the guy rushes out from behind and tries to yank open my door, pulling on it really hard. I hit the gas and he trails me for a second, then hits my window with a rock. I keep going and he throws the rock at me, then runs away. I was shaking so badly I could barely steer. Pretty sure he was sneaking up on me just as I decided to start my engine. I was driving past a small park close to my home when I noticed two older couples on the sidewalk looking into the park. The woman seemed distraught, and the men were trying to calm them down from the looks of things. I slowed down a bit for a second. I debated stopping to see if everything was all right, but decided against it and kept on driving. The following day, I found out a young person from the area had hanged themselves from a tree in the park, and I assumed those two elderly couples were the unfortunate ones to make the discovery. I planned to visit my dad that afternoon. Called him in the morning to ask if he needed anything because I was about to go to the store anyway and could easily pick up some things for him. He didn't answer. A little weird for him, but not too uncommon. But I had that thought in the back of my head. So I tried again like 30 minutes later. Again, nothing. Neither landline or mobile. So I decided to drive over there early and check. Can't really explain it, but I just knew that something had happened. Found him dead in his house. He fell and cracked his head open. To this day, I don't actually know what was worse, finding him like this or the 30-minute long drive where the feeling grew that I was going to walk into something like that. I used to have this drinking buddy. He was a regular at the cafe I worked at. Asked if I wanted to grab drinks. Okay, sure. And hence began our drinking friendship. During this time, I was a heavy drinker. Like my roommate and I would usually take 5 shots to get tipsy kind of thing, and then continue drinking throughout the night. One day, this guy asks me to come out with his friends to this pub. I get my own drink first, and then the second drink he offers to buy. I suppose I trusted him at this point, so I didn't go up to the bar when he went. He comes back and I drink the drink. I knew something was wrong within minutes. My head started swirling. I was slurring and I felt effed up and drunk. Right away, I knew I had to leave. He was very vocal about me staying, but I just pushed past him. He followed me outside. Now, this is when Uber first started up, so I called Uber from my phone. I was trying to close the door. He was still trying to argue for me to stay, or perhaps he should come with me to make sure I got home all right. F that, I left. The next day, I was asleep all day. I couldn't really move or get up. I was in and out of consciousness, effing weird. And why do I think it was him that drugged me? I had put all my cards and my ID into a pocket on the inside of my jacket that was zipped up. They were all gone. And guess who had them? That guy. He went into my effing jacket and took all my shit so I wouldn't be able to pay a cab. Joke's on him that Uber had just become a thing. TLDR saved my dad's life off a 2 a.m. hunch I had that something was off. During the UK's first lockdown, I hadn't seen my dad, who lived on his own for 3 months, but we spoke on the phone every day religiously. One night, whilst I was drifting off to sleep at 2 a.m., I suddenly started feeling overwhelming anxiety, sweating, and just start feeling like something was off. I could not get back to sleep due to worry, so I decided to ring my night owl dad, as I knew he'd be up and answer the phone. But to my surprise, no answer. I woke my partner and told him something was really off, and my dad hadn't answered his phone, which had my anxiety running tenfold at this point. He suggested if he still hadn't answered the phone in the morning, we would drive over and check on him. However, I could not shake this feeling, so at 3 a.m., my partner and I got in the car and drove 3 hours to my dad's home. When we arrived at my dad's house, I walked in to find my dad staring at the wall, gray, yellow in color, slurring his words and utterly confused about where he was. I immediately phoned an ambulance, and he spent the next 4 weeks in hospital with acute kidney failure from undiagnosed end-stage liver cirrhosis. I'll never forget the doctor telling me if I had arrived at his home a few hours later, I would have been calling an undertaker and not an ambulance. Due to the sudden and random confusion caused by cirrhosis, he genuinely believed the TV remote was his phone, hence why he didn't or couldn't seek treatment. Kidney failure comes on so rapidly that the two together are fatal within hours, so me turning up that morning was crucial to him getting the treatment at the right time. As I'm typing this, my dad is driving over to my house to spend the Christmas here with us, and the cirrhosis symptoms remain under control. A happy ending. Sometimes anxiety can be a life-saving gift. I was living about 5 hours away from my parents and spent Easter with them. The plan was to take Monday off work and drive back that day, but for some reason I decided to go back on Sunday night. Woke up about 3 to a weird noise and hit the touch lamp next to my bed. It made a loud popping sound and turned off. Thinking, something isn't right here, I got up and grabbed the bedroom door handle. It was so hot that I immediately pulled my hand back. As it turned out, my entire apartment was in flames. My living room caught fire from a faulty electrical outlet, and it spread to the dining room by the time I got up. The only ways out were through the living room to the front door or through the dining room and kitchen to the back door. I used whatever strength I had to shove my headboard away from the window, broke the window out with my glass, and just screamed. My landlord was letting a guy illegally live in a storage room. He heard me and ran right down the block to the fire station. They actually got me through the window and then put out the fire. I was hours away from my family, had no money or ID, lost my cell phone and my car keys in the fire, and it was only like 4 a.m. I ended up losing pretty much everything. My neighbor was nice enough to let me shower at her place and give me some clothes until my parents made the drive. Not me, but my brother was walking home when he was around 7 or 8, and a man pulled up demanding to take my brother to the hospital because he was limping and was starting to push him into the car. He had foot surgery previously. Our neighbor, whose kid we used to play with, suspected something was up and yelled at the man and took my brother inside her house. The police didn't catch the guy, and years later come to find out the guy and his car matched the description of the man who kidnapped Steven Stainer a short time later, which was a famous incident in our parts. Life could have been very different if our neighbor hadn't been paying attention. I wanted to add that Timothy White became a sheriff, but unfortunately died in an aneurysm. I'd like to think he did some good before he passed. When I was 10 years old, my grandma was watching my younger siblings and me while our parents were at a weekend-long work conference. We were sitting in the living room eating pancakes, and my siblings were watching cartoons while I read the newest Harry Potter book, which had just come out the day before. My brother asked my grandma for more pancakes, and she started to get up. I was only half paying attention because I was engrossed in my book, but out of the corner of my eye, I felt like she was taking longer than usual. She tried to get up, but her leg wouldn't move. She tried to pick it up with her hands, but one of her hands wouldn't move. I knew something was wrong, and I put down my book. Then she fell out of her chair onto the floor. I screamed, and she tried to tell me that she was fine. Her leg had just fallen asleep, and she tripped, but her voice was coming out all slurred, and only half of her face was moving. I recognized signs of a stroke from the babysitter's club. I ran into the kitchen. She had no cell phone back then and called 911. Well, first I called my best friend, the only number I could remember, and asked her mom if I need to dial an area code before 911. Then I called 911. Meanwhile, my siblings got the handyman who was mowing the backyard to come in and help out. The ambulance arrived, and they took her to the hospital, and I don't remember much else. My best friend's mom must have somehow gotten a hold of my parents because they did eventually show up at the hospital. But here's the good news. Because she was treated so quickly, she made a full recovery and is still alive and in good health almost 20 years later. It wasn't me that noticed something's not right. Once, a woman came up to me on a train that I had gotten on and said, "I just wanted you to know that man there is following you." And he was. He followed me in a quiet way when I changed trains, and I ended up asking a cop to walk me home. It was one of the creepiest experiences of my life. In hindsight, I shouldn't even have gone home. I'm pretty sure he stopped following me when I spoke with the police officer, but still. My dad had just passed away from a long battle with cancer, and towards the end, my mom had been acting odd. She hadn't been caring for him towards the end. I ended up leaving work to do so, and she didn't really seem to be mourning him, and they had a reasonably good relationship. A couple of days after he passed, I was going through his stuff, and I noticed it was 10 a.m., and my mom wasn't up. I let her be. 11, 12, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. Finally, I was starting to think maybe something was up. She had never stayed in bed that late ever, so I opened her door. I found her on all fours with her chest on a stool, kneeling in a fairly large pile of urine and feces. I'm not sure how she got on the floor. I feel like I would have heard her fall. After I got her cleaned up and stuff, I asked her what the deal was, and she told me she didn't have the strength to get up, nor the presence of mind to yell for help. Ended up taking her to the ER, and that was the day I figured out I wouldn't be going back to work, because I was going to spend the next few years taking care of my now terminally ill mother. I was about 13 or so years old and walking home from school along the railroad tracks. A police officer in an unmarked Crown Vic in a suit and tie stops on the adjoining road to yell and wave me down to him. Stupid kid me starts to comply with the cop. Next thing I know, a real cop pulls up behind him, gets out, and approaches the man. He speaks to him for a second and tells me to go home. Looking back, I was this close to become a child abduction case. I got home from work, and as soon as I stepped out of my car, something felt off. My upstairs neighbor left his dog out, which wasn't super uncommon, but she was acting strange, which just added to my weird intuition. Normally, she's super excited to greet you, but this time she just sat by his door. About 20 minutes pass and I can't shake the feeling. I decide to go to his door and see if he wants to come down for a drink. As I approach, I notice his dog made it inside, but now she's barking nonstop. I knock and I knock until I'm pounding on the door. I jiggle the handle and it's locked. I run down and through my house to a back stairwell that connects our residences. I open the door to his apartment and he's overdosing on Percocet, convulsing on the ground, struggling to breathe. EMS said that if they had been called 10 minutes later, he might not have survived.